Commonwealth and Act relative to the protection of the wetlands. And I should let you know, this is being broadcast on Acushnet Public Access Cable. So minutes for approval, there are none.
None yet.
None yet. Meeting over the peer review report from Beals and Thomas on 88 Wing Lane.
So I want to push that to the stormwater discussion.
Okay. Old business, we have none. New business, none. We have a very long discussion agenda.
Yep.
Stormwater and other things. So we'll start with first item, acceptance by commission of DEP Wetlands Enforcement Manual.
So I'm asking that the commission review the enforcement manual. We did this on the commission I was on, and we voted to adopt the wetlands enforcement manual from DEP. And then we formed a 3-member enforcement team, so that you didn't have to have an entire commission go out to see something. You could have 3 designated members that could go out and report back to the commission at a meeting. Shortened up the site visit stuff a little bit, and it gave those people an opportunity to go around town and observe things. And I'm not here at night, I'm not here on weekends, you folks are. And almost everything happens on Friday afternoon in my town, and Saturdays and Sundays. So it would be very helpful if you checked out the enforcement manual. It's on the DEP website. I have sent it out once. And we'll put that on for the 23rd and see where we go.
Okay.
And the 27th. And then
So the next item, wetlands enforcement team, I'm guessing that follows up on this.
that follows up on the enforcement manual. You see their recommendations in there. They don't recommend notices of intent for violations. They recommend enforcement orders with orders to correct and things like that. But it talks about getting on people's property and how to do it legally and all those things. So it's of some value to read.
All right, next item then, policy and RDA requirements requiring DEP sign with the number RDA-123. Also require final inspection and sign off by.
So we have a problem. We've approved a lot of IDAs in town, and as I go around, I have no idea that there was an IDA approved anywhere. And we don't get to inspect any of the conditions that we give for these IDAs. We don't do any erosion control inspections. People don't call us. We don't know when they start their projects. And we don't know when they complete them, and we don't know that they did it right. So we're charging a small fee for an IDA, and I think it would be valuable for us as a commission to have our own sign that says IDA with a number that we assign to them, so that they hang up an IDA sign, and we know that's there, and we have the right to inspect, and that they get a certificate of completion from the commission. There's no extra charge for it, just to tighten that process up and know that it was done right. I get a lot of calls from realtors trying to get things cleared up in properties, and after they got their COC for their NOI, they put a shed in, or they put a pool in, and they did all these things, and they say they got a verbal approval from the commission. And you'll hear about that later on tonight on one of these. So it really wouldn't be any extra work for us, and it would definitely tighten up our process.
Okay, yeah. I read the language that you sent. And
Yeah.
it's pretty standard, nothing out of the ordinary about it.
So if you guys want to, vote to do that, you can. It doesn't require a public hearing. But
If anybody has any thoughts on,
So the applicant would come to the town and request a sign.
when they get the RDA, we would, in their conditions, a conditional RDA, we would tell them you have to put up a sign, and here's the number we've assigned. And you have to have your erosion controls, if they're required, inspected 2 weeks before you start. And you need to have a sign off when you're done. And during the RDA, we have the right to enter the property. Nothing overbearing, it just really makes our process.
so I recall us asking anybody before starting the project that they contact the agent anyway, to let us know that the project is started.
Yep, but even people with notices of intent don't contact us before they start. And we had some of that last week too, so.
Anybody else, comments, questions?
I read the guidelines. Seem perfectly reasonable.
Yeah. Is that pulled from other towns?
No, that was just in my experience of what I went into and what I'm encountering here, and trying to get people to be honest about what they're doing. So,
I'll accept the motion to accept this RDA language as proposed.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstaining? Okay, thank you all. Thanks, Pat. Next item, town vehicle.
So we're a green community, and we have a grant for 3 electric vehicles as a green community. And we lease them, and we pay for 30,000 miles per vehicle. Last vehicle that I turned in had 5,000 miles on it. So we paid for 25,000 miles we didn't use. I approached the town administrator about using the town vehicle to commute because of the increase in gas and all of those things, and the distance of my commute, and the fact that I'm down here on weekends and odd hours for complaints. He's in favor of it. He wants you folks to support it or not support it, and then he'll take it to the selectmen and have them approve it. So I would ask you to support that.
Is this like an annual lease?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is something we'd have to revisit for the next lease?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And maybe gas is $1.50 a gallon someday, I don't know, but
Never happened again.
right now I'm spending over $400 a month in gas just commuting. So, and we're not getting any raises this year. We've all been told that the town doesn't have any money, and as we know, things have gotten expensive at the supermarket, and the oil tank, and all that stuff. So,
We got it in, town's already paying for it.
correct.
But
And we're a green community and should be using the cars, and that's kind of been the rub there.
Okay.
I need you guys to vote on that.
All right. And a motion to approve.
Well,
Go ahead, Ron.
I drive to Boston every day, 55 miles each way.
Yep.
I pay for parking $25 each
Yep.
day. I got a family of 3, I can do it. I mean, putting all that wear and tear on a town vehicle and being a taxpayer, and I'm sorry, I like you, you do a good job, but I'm a no on that.
All right, well, so when we get to the vote then,
Okay.
that's fine. Any other questions or comments?
No.
So, motion to approve the use of this vehicle that the town has leased and is paying for.
I say yes, that we approve
Okay.
asking permission
So
from
that's
the
your,
town.
that's your motion. Okay. Do you have a second?
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Abstaining? Opposed? Yep. All right, so 3-1-1. So that passes. Meeting attendance by commissioners.
So we have 2 members that aren't making it to meetings, and it's, as we get busier, it's gonna be more important to have 7 members.
Mhm.
People are gonna be taking vacations, all those things are happening, and we could run into quorum problems and delay people in their projects, and it would just be nice to have a full complement. There have been 4 people that called interested in being on the commission. I directed them to the town administrator's office.
Okay.
So there are people out there. And I did see an email from Paul Valenti saying that, he probably should, move on, and things have changed in his life and all of that. Even adding 1 more member would be of value for summertime. I understand that, Evelyn's got some issues, and
When I first came on the commission, we had full commission, plus we had 2 alternate members.
Yep.
Has anyone talked to Paul?
Paul has emailed a couple of times, and he's indicated he's giving serious thought as to what he's gonna do, so I can give him another nudge and ask him to make a decision, especially as Pat says, we have 4 people,
Yeah.
that are curious anyway.
Yeah.
All right. And I can do the same with the other one too. Okay. Before we move on, any other discussion agenda items from anybody? Okay. Next is stormwater, and I know you said you wanted to move
So,
The peer review of bills and tons, do you want to start with that since we're in stormwater now?
no, so I just want to tell you about the stormwater regulation revisions.
Okay.
It makes no sense for you folks to approve the revisions unless the bylaw passes a town meeting. And the stormwater bylaw has been revised. But it hasn't been revised for any issues the town has. It's been revised to accept changes required by EPA. And this was all drafted by Conoco. I didn't have any input on it. He does stormwater MS4 in 7 communities, and it's kind of a boilerplate document. But you never know what happens on town meeting floor. So it doesn't make any sense to vote on that tonight. And there are some things in the stormwater regulation, and I do believe I sent it out before, that are, to me, a little burdensome. And I don't know whether, what your appetite is for the tree preservation part of it. For me, I don't live here, but for me, the tree preservation thing is a little over the top. Maybe it could be toned down a little bit. Maybe we talk about it and see what we can do, but I don't think that a tree bank and having people pay money if there's no tree bank to the town to be used later to plant the trees, I just think it's really cumbersome. And it's never passed where I live. Well, we've never even passed a stormwater bylaw, conservation bylaw. Nobody wants to do that stuff, so. But that's something we're gonna need to really look at and discuss. But we'll have time, because once town meeting votes, it'll take the Attorney General some time to ratify the minutes of the town meeting, and that won't become effective until 60 days after the Attorney General ratifies it. So we've got some time on that.
So are you saying here on the agenda that we should have a public hearing?
We would have to have a public hearing on that regulation.
Right,
Because
it's applied to by-election.
under the bylaw, as the Stormwater Authority, we have the right to make our own local regulations. In the existing bylaw, we don't allow low-impact design credits, which is crazy. And we've had people that had trouble meeting stormwater because we didn't accept low-impact designs. We will accept low-impact designs in the new stormwater bylaw. There's some relaxation of single-family homes and things like that. The 5,000 square feet remains for hotspots, commercial driveways, industrial operations, things like that. So that'll all stay the same.
And is there a minimum amount of time before town meeting we have to do this?
We're not gonna do this after town meeting.
We have to.
It needs to pass, the bylaw needs to pass at town meeting. And then the commission will vote on the regulations, the local regulation. And that regulation hasn't been updated since 2007. And it had the bylaw.
So this is all contingent on the bylaw vote anyways.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the bylaw update is a mandate under MS4 for us to be in compliance with the town. So.
Any other questions from people here about this? First, when is town meeting?
May 9th?
May 9th. May 9th.
Anything else on that?
Nope.
Okay. So our next on the list is Repwell 734 Main Street.
Yeah, so Repwell, their engineer delivered the package today, along with the cover letter that everybody has. But they didn't deliver a permit application and fee. So I'd like to table this for tonight.
Permit for what?
So just for the record, Mark, would you please just tell us your name and where you're from?
Mark Sanrosio, I'm representing Repwell.
Make sure you're loud enough for the microphone to hear you. So,
Permit for what?
Stormwater.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't have a permit application and I don't have a fee, so I'm gonna push this to the next meeting.
When was, this is unbeknownst to me.
This has been going on for months and months and months.
Right, but this is the first I've heard about a permit or a fee from anybody.
No, I
No, you didn't.
think when we were there, we told you for the site visit that you were gonna be getting a stormwater permit and you needed to supply plans and do all these things, and you said that you weren't actually gonna do the activities that the license allowed that you have.
Right.
And you didn't wanna go through all of that. And that's when I said, well, then maybe you don't want the Class 3 license, and you should think about what you really want to do. And now we got a submittal today without an application, without a check. So
Well,
you
you
submitted
never said
something.
anything about a permit to me.
Well, you hired
Or
an
a
engineer.
fee.
You hired an engineer, and your engineer knows the process. And your engineer had the paperwork delivered to the town today.
Yep, that's the plan
And the submittal date
proposal
was
which
last
you asked
Wednesday
for.
for that.
You never said anything about a fee or a permit application,
Well, then you need to talk to your engineer.
okay?
That's who you hired. So I don't want to take any action on this tonight until we have an application and a fee. But I would ask the commissioners to look at the information and, you know, be apprised of it for the next meeting.
Mr. Senarizio, will you talk to your engineer about this then, so we can get this onto the agenda for the
Yeah,
next
this
meeting?
is already getting out of control.
We'll talk about this in the next, we'll take a list in the next meeting then.
When's the next meeting?
In 2 weeks.
27th.
The 27th?
Yeah.
Next, Deep Brook Estates, off Park Drive, stormwater facility acquired.
So, back in March, Mr. Costello stopped in the office and wanted to know if he was eligible for Deep Brook Estates. I guess he recently acquired the project from
Costco.
the Costas, Mike Costas' father. And I went to planning and there hadn't been a stormwater application. So I sent him the email that you have, telling him he needed to get a stormwater permit. He didn't reply to that. So I sent him the certified letter that you have after that. And he has agreed to apply for a stormwater permit and get his engineer going on that. I did send an email to the building commissioner asking him not to issue any permits for the project until the stormwater permit was issued. And he replied that he would.
Mr. Senarizio's engineering plans there. So, before I move on, any questions, should have asked if any questions about Mr. Senarizio's project or Deep Brook Estates at the moment? No. All right, CVE North America, 88 Wing Lane.
And that's the Beals and Thomas report that you have. So, Beals and Thomas went out and actually did a wet weather test and observed all the erosion control and the stormwater controls during a rainstorm. And the site's not graded properly, water's running in multiple directions, not going to the basin. The outlet of the basin is a foot lower than the wetlands that it's supposed to discharge to. So they're retooling and working with Beals and Thomas to submit a new plan to get the water to the basin. CVE did some work out there without us knowing that wasn't, approved under the RDA. And I mentioned
How recently was this?
in the last couple of weeks, when I saw those pictures of the new slopes on the basin and all that work, that wasn't approved. So I did call up Eric James and talk to him about it. And my feeling is that after we get the next report from Beals and Thomas, that we require a notice of intent to be filed for the rest of the work, so that we have better control over what's going on up there. It just doesn't work out as an IDA. They did everything they said they weren't gonna do.
So the new work you're mentioning, is it this berm that's reconstructed? Is
Yes.
that- Okay, so
Yeah.
it's this right here.
Yeah, it came like that last time I was up there.
Right.
Also, there are other perk tests on there recently, and drainage tests and...
Beals and Thomas did them.
Yes.
They made them do infiltration tests,
Yeah.
and failed the infiltration test. And that'll be one of the new requirements in the new stormwater bylaw regulation, is that all these basins require an infiltration test as part of the approval. It makes no sense to approve a plan when the basin's not gonna function.
So that berm's basically just holding that water in place.
Correct.
It's just gonna just be
It's a
stagnant.
Band-Aid.
Because it was supposed to drain to the east.
Yes, and then.
But that elevation is higher than the actual basin.
Correct. By a foot.
Right. Correct.
Kind of sounds like when that new Standard Times building was built, they had to drain of the shower floor higher than the rest of the shower floor itself. Dang. Anything else here on CBE North America? All right, next one then, PJ Keating, 72 South Main Street, stormwater.
Yep.
Required.
So similar situation, I sent an email to Rob Robinson of PJ Keating, advising them they had to apply for a stormwater permit. He didn't respond, so I sent a certified letter to Derek Hill, the new president of PJ Keating. And you'll see his response behind my certified letter. And I've asked town council to work on the reply to Mr. Hill's reply. So I'm gonna be pushing that off to the next meeting for town council to get that letter out. And then we can have a public hearing on the 27th and decide whether or not they need a stormwater permit.
Can we put a site visit then? Because the last time we went there, we were supposed to look at what they paved, we never did. We just went out back.
Absolutely.
I'd like to see the area and measure it out, and so we got.
Sure. Yep.
Right.
But you'll need the benefit of a letter from town council first.
Oh, well, whatever
Yeah, but we'll schedule
goes on
that.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And also, how does this tie into the recent report from the special master appointed by the Attorney General?
That's what I'm looking for town council to clear up. Because if you read the soil removal bylaw, it says they have to be in compliance with all of our bylaws and regulations to get the soil board permit.
Right.
So, as of today, I'm of the opinion that they need a stormwater permit, so they wouldn't be in compliance with those requirements. I've spoken to a peer review contractor, Conoco, and they agree that they need a stormwater permit. They were going to send me their opinion, and I spoke to town administrator, and we decided to go with town council. They have a wetlands expert, and they assisted in all these regulations and bylaws, and that's what we're paying for. So that's where that's gonna go.
Anybody else here with questions or comments?
I did give you all a copy of the current stormwater regulations, so you can read it. I didn't give you the bylaw because there's really no regulations in the bylaw, but the bylaw's on the town website if you want to read it. And I also gave you a copy of their NIPD's permit. And the NIPD's permit has been highlighted for some pertinent areas. And I'd like you to read the NIPD's permit, compare it to our stormwater regulation, and compare it to the things that you've heard. And really read EPA's comments in the NIPD's permit. There are some very valuable comments from EPA about the stormwater system there at PJ Keating.
Mr. Leger, Mr. Holden, anybody?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Luke Leger, McGregor, Leger and Stevens on behalf of PJ Keating Company. Just very briefly, I think we're all waiting, I guess, for a letter from town council, so I don't know that there's much for me to say this evening, other than just in response to your question, Mr. Chair. The report from the special master, which was adopted by the court, really doesn't address stormwater at all, to answer your question. So that wasn't an issue that was before the court, so it really hasn't been ruled on. Maybe town council has some other angle to take a look at, but that's, just responding directly to your question. That wasn't addressed. May I also request through you, Mr. Chair, that either Mr. Hannon or someone on the commission send me a copy of the regs, the stormwater regs that you just referenced?
It's on the town website.
So it's the
I'll send it
same-
to you if you want. It's just, yeah, nothing's been changed.
Okay.
The planning board voted to change the stormwater regulation a year ago, but they didn't advertise it in the newspaper. So
So it's the same one that's on the
the
website?
same one,
Okay, just wanted to-
2007, yes.
Just wanted to confirm. Okay, thank you.
And while we're on that, Chapter 5, or Section 5 of the stormwater regulation deals specifically with what's exempt from a permit and what's not. And it just call your attention to those items.
Anybody else from the PJK has comments, questions? Anybody in the audience on this topic with comments or questions? Need clarification on anything? Okay. So expect this to be on the agenda again in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would expect they could turn around a letter in 2 weeks from KP Law.
We shall see.
All right. So that's it for stormwater discussion unless anybody else here has
When
comments.
the bylaws go through, 2007?
2007.
Okay. Are you waiting to, okay, they've changed, so we're just waiting for it?
So EPA required an update to the bylaw. And that needs to be in June, or we're going to be in violation of our new score permit. It should have been done last year, but we have till June of this year. And then there's some increased levels of TSS removal and some other things that are required in our regulation from the bylaw. And then I wanted to dial back the intensity of it for single-family homes and someone who's going to pave their driveway. And the tree cutting thing came as the boilerplate from Conoco that other communities are adopting. There's some concern about clear cutting for the solar fields. I understand there's an article for town meeting for a 6-month moratorium on solar fields. So that should give everybody time to figure out what they want to do. But once again, I'm not a fan of the tree thing. It's pretty extreme.
Okay. All right. Next, then we'll head over to the violations. First one is 88 Wing Lane, violation of RDA condition, NOI required for compliance. I guess this just picks up on what you said.
Yeah, I really think that we should issue an enforcement order for the failure of the project and require them to file a notice of intent. And not for the purpose of correction, but for the purpose of having some control over what goes on at the site. Because under the IDA, we're completely in the dark, and they change contractors pretty regularly.
Okay.
I did give him a heads up on the phone that I was leaning towards a notice of intent. He said he understood. The own engineer said it should have been a notice of intent.
Lesson learned.
Yep.
Okay, next is 2 Tilly Way, reported wetlands alteration in rear of property.
So I got a report from the animal control officer that she went up to do a barn inspection at 2 Tilly Way. And the wetlands at 2 Tilly Way have been completely wiped out. I noticed a lot of activity doing the inspections in that other woman's backyard for Eric DeBarros. There's a neighbor that backs up to him, and I have access to her backyard to watch that. And lo and behold, this came in. So I went out, and I could see from the front of the property, from the street, that there's been a lot of alterations to what you folks approved for an NOI back in 2016 or 2018. You gave him his COC. Wetlands were delineated. He knew about it. There's an enforcement order in the file from Merrill Lee. His father bought a bunch of pigs and a couple of hundred chickens and put them in the wetlands. And now there's no wetlands. And if you walk up the power lines from Tilly Way, you can see clearly that it's all been wiped out. So I sent him a certified letter. He did call me. He was very nice about it. And he said that the commission had given him permission to eliminate the wetlands. So I don't see anything in the file that says that. I only see stuff from Merrill Lee saying you have to stay out of the wetlands. So I wanted to find out from you folks, if you recall approving, doing all that work in the Highlands. I just really didn't think so, but I have to give him the benefit of the doubt. Is he here tonight?
Mr. Carvalho here.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
January 25th, the site visit, 2020.
Okay.
I believe you were there.
Can you come up to the podium?
Yeah, actually, it'd be great if you go to the point so we can see you, and also the microphones will pick you up. And for the record, again, state your name, please.
Aaron Cavallo, Tilly Way.
Okay.
January 25th, 2020, you guys came out for a site visit, and we had spoke about the area in the back. The area where the animals are, that's not wet. I have all the engineering and the delineation maps and everything. That's not wet. The area that I spoke to Mary Lee about, that she sent me the cease and desist for, was right behind the house, and it was all just stagnant water. And I don't know if you guys remember, but it was like raw sewage water, and it smelled. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah, you had a pipe.
Yeah, I dug at my own expense a pipe underground, because that's also town water that comes out from the street, that goes underneath Tilly Way, and it goes through Jerry's property also. I dug a pipe, brought it to where it already drained to, and I filled everything in. And Mary Lee told me it was all set. That's why I was kind of confused when I got that letter.
Okay.
I don't know if there's like a meeting that we can go back and look at.
I
Did you
just
find
recommend
out
a
where the
site visit.
sewage was coming from?
No,
Still there?
I distinctly remember everybody that was there.
He was gonna look into it, and I never heard anything from it again.
Yeah.
I went by there on Saturday, I knocked on your door, I didn't wanna look around without talking to you first.
Oh, sorry. I was, what was I saying?
If you go the next street over, there's pile lines there, you can walk right up.
Yeah, I
That's
get
the
that.
second.
I wasn't gonna be a detective, I was gonna just
Yeah.
talk to
Yeah.
him and.
Yeah. Yeah. And I drove by about an hour ago.
Yeah, I think I saw you in a Kia.
Yeah, site visit's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Yeah, I haven't done any additional work since.
It looked,
the
it's
old-
like, from the street, it looks like it looked, well, I mean, the house is
It's
more
awful.
complete.
The
It
yard's
looked-
I can only
terrible.
go by what we delineated on the plan and what's in
Yeah.
the NOI
Right.
file. and-
The only thing is, the only thing I did was all the rocks, I'm sure you guys remember all the rocks and the trees that fell
Yeah.
over. All the rocks were all piled up because I finished my stone wall that was not in wetlands. That's all done. And my plan was just to push the rocks to the side of the property that's also not in wetlands and just loam the area and grass it and grade it all.
And he called right up, and he's been very good about it, so
All right.
let's just figure it out.
Yeah.
We're going for the
Yeah, so for the
20th,
All right.
whatever that Saturday is.
I wrote it down.
Okay.
When would it be, just so I know? The site
It'll
visit?
be two Saturdays from now.
The Saturday before the 27th.
Okay. 23rd.
23rd, 24th, whatever that Saturday is.
Yes. All right.
I'm not certified in calendars.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
So the next one then, we have 98, actually, I should ask anybody questions for.
Yep.
98 Robinson Road,
So,
reported storm.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, reported stormwater violation of rear property, storm certified mail sent, cease and desist issued.
So this was a neighbor that reported this, and I went out to Robinson Road, and it's right at the Blueberry Field, the Blueberry Lady there. If you pull up the driveway after the Blueberry Field, there's a sign for number 86 Robinson Road. That's the complainant, and the people that own 98 took a backhoe and dug a 2 to 3 foot trench from there, like 100 feet from the back of the house, right down to this guy's driveway. And all the water from their site is going into his, and it's a lot of water.
So it's going from 98 to 86.
Yeah, they've got very high groundwater at 98. And they were not happy to hear from me. I explained the rules and regulations, and they said they're going to submit something, and I told them I'd get in touch with them before the next meeting. So I thought with all of these, we'd give everybody that contacted us a chance to do something, and maybe we want to do a Saturday site visit out there. I think that would be valuable too.
Sure.
And the owner of 86 won't mind a bit.
Is anybody here representing 98 Robinson Road? Okay. Are there any questions about 98 Robinson Road? Anybody else? All right, yeah, site visit's a good idea.
Yep.
Next, we have 39 Nice Lane, reported stormwater violation of their property, cease and desist issued.
So this was another complaint from animal control, out doing barn inspections. This is the property we talked about. I think you know the people that owned it before, Bob.
Yeah.
He cut all the trees at 39 Robinson Road. He's kept in contact with me.
Mhm.
He's kept in contact with me, and I thought, so I put it in the wrong spot, but you'll see an email from Farland.
Right.
So he has contacted Farland Corp. Their engineer emailed me. He's being retained. They're gonna do a stormwater plan, submit it to the commission. I sent him back an email asking him when he has a signed contract to let us know that he's been retained. Otherwise, I'm gonna put it on for the next meeting. If he's been retained, then I'm gonna put it off for 2 meetings because it's gonna take some time for him to do the work. But what we care about is he's doing it. The fellow has stopped cutting any more trees or bringing in any more fill to build his driveway. There's some questions from some of the neighbors that there may be a wetland there. There is some water on the surface on a paper street that goes into his property. I believe it's isolated land. It really doesn't qualify as a wetland. We can let Farland give him some advice on that, and I'd recommend a site visit for that too. There's a lot of interest in this from a lot of neighbors. And I can understand that it's a big change to have all the trees cut down in your backyard and suddenly, your backyard doesn't look like it used to, but this fellow did buy the land and he did pay for it. And he's met with Becky, he has all the rules for his animals, he met with the Board of Health. He's doing everything he's supposed to do, except getting the permit first. So,
Pots here?
no, he asked me if he had to come, and I told him he did.
Yeah.
I told everybody that called me that they didn't have to come, that we really weren't gonna have a hearing tonight. I would just recommend that.
Yeah, site visit would be good.
Yep. So let's site visit.
Sure.
Yes. Can I make a comment on that at all?
Please.
You don't mind?
Yeah, for the record, yeah, that'd be great.
It's Robert Munier, 3 Beechwood Drive. I don't have bought this property, but I live downstream. I've lived there for 40 years. I understand what the guy wants to do, and I don't blame him. He wants to raise a family, he wants to have cows and horses and whatever he may want, but the impact that it's gonna have on the 40 or so homes downwind from where he's planning on doing what he wants to do is change a lot of lives dramatically. Just in knowing that there's a few cows in that neighborhood now, the smell that comes from it is atrocious in the summer months when we're sitting in our pools or sitting on our decks. As Pat, I talked to him about this, the groundwater, I used to go with my kids in that little right-of-way, which is a paper street, and we used to go nature hunting in that area, and the groundwater at 18 was never as wet as it is now. If you go to that area now, you're going to see standing water that's been there since the last rainstorm, which was probably a week ago. And it's saturated. You can't walk to this gentleman's property like you once were able to do it before he cut the woods down. So what I'm just concerned about is maybe we can do a feasibility study on the impact that it's going to have on the neighborhood, as well as what's going to happen to the water runoff. I know that he's got to put a plan together, but this property abuts a creek, and this creek goes all the way through to behind Acushnet sawmills, right into the ocean, to the river. So if there's going to be hazardous material, like whatever comes from the animals, I think that's going to be an impact all the way down to the river. So I don't know where it starts on my end. I've lived there for 40 years. There's 3 abutters that recently became widowers, and I've talked to them, and it's a concern to them. They don't have the man to go out and show how they feel. So I'm just asking for some advice to, I mean, I'd really like to see this thing, make him reconsider what he's doing and what the impact could be for the people downstream. I did mention to him, he's a nice guy, I wished him luck, but I said, he's on the right side of the wind. The prevailing winds never come, or never go to his house. They always come down our neck of the woods. So we're gonna smell that constantly. And I don't know how you can keep the smell in your own yard, but I don't think you can. So,
You said 3, which street?
3 Beechwood Drive. So I don't know, I'm asking for some assistance as far as the neighborhood is concerned. I was gonna go and we were gonna round up the troops because most of them are opposed to it. But I didn't wanna start something without getting the details that I'd be looking for to see where we could fight them on it.
Well, if he's gonna have any animals, he has to have some sort of a plan for dealing with the animal waste, especially on a property that's fairly narrow. So
It
I know
is.
and he has to do that in consultation with the animal control agent.
Well, and what I would add is, under our stormwater regulation, that's considered a hotspot. So that's a high use of the land. And we have a very comprehensive stormwater regulation. This is not a quick thing. There's a lot of work that goes into it, there's a lot of calculations that go into it. It's peer reviewed by another outside engineer. And I think everyone's been happy with the peer review work that's going on. Mistakes are being picked up, things are being done right. And
Okay.
he did, he does have the right to cut the trees down with the stormwater permit. He has met with the animal control officer and the health agent, and they have told him exactly how many animals he can have and what he can do. And, all appearances are he's willing to comply.
Okay.
So, if you want to come by the office, I'll give you a copy of the stormwater regulation, and you can have some time to check it out, because
I have some of the paperwork as far as having animals, as far as where you gotta put stables and how far away from waterways you gotta be, drinking water, other dwellings. And you're right, it's like anything else, it's all in how you see and how you read the literature and whether he's in.
and Becky does a good
compliance
job
with it.
enforcing all that stuff.
Sorry?
Becky does a very good job enforcing all that stuff.
I know she does.
She knows her regulations, and
She just can't keep the smell in that guy's property, that's the only thing.
Nope.
And that's, I don't care what he does, that's my biggest problem that I'm gonna have.
what I just keep hearing from the Board of Health is the right to farm town.
I know.
So you might be up against something there.
I know, and I felt the same way, but I also feel the right to farm is cucumbers, tomatoes, and any kind of vegetables, so we look at it differently, so, okay, thank you,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
So after we get the signed contract from Farland Corp., he'll give us the timetable that they'll be done. It's gonna go to Gills and Thomas for peer review. It's gonna take some time. So I wouldn't think it would even be done in May.
Yeah, so there won't be any animals there anytime soon. This, all this other stuff has to get done first.
There's a pony right now,
Yep. But
that's corralled in the middle of his yard.
sometimes people make grand plans and they don't realize what they're really spending when they start to embark on these things, and when they find out, they tone it down. And, this may be the case.
I can only keep my
Yeah.
fingers crossed.
Yep.
Anybody else, questions or comments on this topic? Okay. Next one, 135 Mattapoisett Road, reported wetlands filling and tree cutting, certified mail, cease and desist issued.
So I did hear from the owner's fiance at Mattapoisett Road. I did go out, and this was a private complaint of trees being cut down next to the brook and the side slopes of the brook being filled in with concrete and other materials. And she called up upset that she got a certified letter, and that I had looked at her backyard from the street, and that maybe other people were looking in her yard. And I explained to her that I see firewood at the front, right by the brook. And she said that her brother-in-law dropped off a bunch of firewood, and that makes sense, because it was cut to firewood length. And he didn't want to carry it any further than he had to, so he backed up to the driveway and kicked it out of his truck.
Okay.
I buy that.
Yeah.
But as far as going on the property and seeing the concrete, they weren't up for that. They didn't want anybody on their property. And she asked me, what would happen. I said I would knock on the neighbor's door and ask the neighbor if I could go look in her backyard. And they called me back in about half an hour and said that they would agree to a site visit, but not this week, next week. So I'm going out Monday morning at 10 o'clock. We'll figure that out.
Okay.
That won't be hard.
So Monday morning at 10 o'clock on the
I'm
neighbor's
going,
property.
yeah, with under her.
And then you'll let us know.
I'll let you know on the 27th. All this is gonna circle back to the 27th.
Right.
And maybe get pushed back, or there'll be some enforcement orders or whatever.
And you'll let us know if this will go on the site visit list for the 23rd for the rest of us.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. These all came in the same day.
Busy.
Yeah. It was Becky out doing barn inspections. So,
Get a response on the commission.
Monday the 18th. Anything else done on 135 Mattapoisett Road? All right, so 72 South Main Street, enforcement order, continuing violations, DEP file number SE 001-0558, silt beyond erosion controls.
So this is the continuing part of Keating's reply as to whether or not they wanted to move the silt pile. And we wanted them to move it by June. They came back with a, I believe, end of August date. I wanted to amend the order of conditions, and Mr. Legier sent an email or letter.
There was a letter first, the amendment was an email, I believe.
Yeah, saying that, Keating didn't understand there was going to be an amendment of the order of conditions, and that they, I don't want to put words in his mouth and I don't have it, but they may not be up for that. And that they were willing to, work under the notice of intent is what I took out of it, and just set a date and do the work. Talking to town council advised to scrap that and to issue an enforcement order with an order to correct, and that they would work on that with me. That's 95% done. And that's why I say I don't know how long it will take them to do the opinion on the other thing, but I could have it tomorrow, I could have it next week. I've got to call in to Jeff Blake to find out. So I was going to put it on for the 27th and see where it goes. The enforcement order will be out by the 27th. We'd have to have a public hearing for that, for Keating to present their side of it, and then you folks would have to either ratify it or not.
So you anticipate, and I'll get the question. So you're anticipating then that when this is on the agenda for the 27th, it will be a public hearing as opposed to...
Yes, because there will have been an enforcement order issued.
Okay.
I will have issued the enforcement order that I get from town council prior to the 27th.
Right.
And then Keating would come in and give their side of it. And you folks would, like you've done before, decide whether or not to ratify the enforcement order, and it would go on from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Luke Legier, McGregor, Legier and Stevens for PJ Keating Company. Understanding this discussion may be to be continued, I just wanted to sort of highlight for the commission from a sort of higher level view really what we're talking about here, which is Keating received an order of conditions for this work last summer in July. We have committed in a letter to the commission to start performing that work next month and to have it completed by August. And when I talk about that, I'm talking about moving the pile back out of the commission's jurisdiction, right? There's the second piece of this project, which would be the analysis of what restoration works required in the wetlands, and that's what our wetland consultant would do in conjunction with the commissions as well. We never did request an amendment to the order of conditions under the DEP policy that's been in place since 1995, I think. We would have to request that. And I wasn't at every single meeting of the commission, but I know that that was never something we contemplated. That's really not something we understood the commission to be contemplating. We thought it was a dialogue whereby we would commit to a timeline, and that's what we've done. And I would just point out, in terms of that, the timeline of getting this work done, which is, I think, ultimately what the commission really wants, and what Keating wants as well, where we have committed to start that removal of the pile next month and be done by August. If the commission issues an enforcement order requiring that work to be done more quickly, Keating's going to have no choice other than to appeal, because we can't do the work any more quickly. It's that simple. And if you look at it from a timeline perspective, let's say the commission meets in 2 weeks and votes to issue us that cease and desist or enforcement order. Well, we have 60 days to appeal. Then, once that appeal's filed, the town has 90 days to file their record. And then we're off and running in the courts. And we all saw how long that can take, right? You might recall the commission issued 4 enforcement orders to us back in July and August 2020. We got a decision on that in January of this year, annulling those orders, those enforcement orders. So we're not interested in getting bogged down in another legal battle with the commission and the town over this. We've committed to what we think is a very reasonable timeline to get this work done. It's the best Keating's able to do after consulting with contractors. So I would just ask the commission to sort of take a step back and think about in the next couple weeks what it is you're really wanting Keating to do and what it is we've committed to do without an enforcement order. That's really all I have to say for now. I guess maybe we'll be talking again in a couple weeks, but I thank you for your time.
I want to get clarity while you're there. So you said getting the soil out of the area that's within our jurisdiction. Does that mean getting it off site? 'Cause I think that's what the town has asked for, right? It's just completely removed from the site?
Well, I don't know that. I know that the town, under the stipulations, has to approve where material is stockpiled.
Okay.
So, and I don't want this commission to approve something that's not in sync with the stipulations. Because I think that P.J. Keating would go back and say, it says the town has to approve where the dirt goes, the Conservation Commission is the town, so therefore it's approved. And that's not what the stipulations say. The soil board is about to meet, and we'll get some clarification on where all of that is going. And Luke is right. Council called me and said, you're on the wrong track on the amended order of conditions. There's very limited instances where that can be done. And that was why I retreated from that when you sent over your letter. But more important, they want to tell us that they're going to do it. And Keating has been telling, I'm going to be here almost it will be 2 years, July 1st. And that's how long, to Mr. Legier's comments of how long all of this takes, that's how long this has been going on. I sent Keating a letter telling him they need to get a stormwater permit. And I'd asked him to read the letter that the president wrote back, because this is just a circular letter that says, I'm going to paraphrase. So can I read the letter?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, P.J. Keating is in receipt of your March 30th, 22 letter stating the current stormwater bylaw and regulation requires to apply for a stormwater permit before any construction permits can be issued. P.J. Keating paved in excess of 5,000 square feet and elected to disturb the area of the former asphalt plant in excess of 5,000 square feet during a recent remediation of contaminated soils in 2021, which triggers a requirement for a local stormwater permit. That's my language that I sent to Mr. Hill. And he wrote back, regarding the comment that PJK paved in excess of 5,000 square feet, it's not clear what areas on PJK's property the letter's referring to. They know what they paved. We've talked to them about it. It was in the email to Rob Robinson. And this is just a deflection in my mind by the president of P.J. Keating to try and delay this. So then he writes, and PJK does not believe this has occurred. Now, they paved all around the new asphalt plant, all that whole area they redeveloped. They disturbed the entire area where the former asphalt plant was to do a remediation of contaminated soil there. And when you read their NIPD's permit and when you read the stormwater regulation, disturbing more than 5,000 square feet for that work requires a stormwater permit. The NIPD's permit requires them to keep that whole area in a completely different condition than they are. It's supposed to be stabilized, stormwater is supposed to be going to a specific spot, nothing's been done with it. And then he writes that if the letter refers to the repair and maintenance of pavement around the hot mix asphalt plant and bin ramp, that area has been impervious and paved for decades and was simply repaved. The bins weren't there. All those things weren't there. They may have paved impervious areas, but they weren't previously paved. They were just compacted road, which under the stormwater regulation is impervious. So then he goes on to say, if that comment refers to some other areas on PJK's property, please specify the locations, provide photographs or other supporting evidence so that we may understand and evaluate the allegation. If Mr. Hill took the time to read our stormwater regulation and went to section 5, he would see that redevelopment projects require stormwater permits. Paving more than 5,000 square feet, repaving more than 5,000 square feet requires a stormwater permit. And this is just another, I'm gonna make it work harder and take more time to get me to do what I have to do. It took us almost 2 years to get, as Mr. Legier said, to get the decision from the special master. And Keating said for the last, I don't know how many years, we're grandfathered, we don't need a permit. Well, that's not true. The judge said, you need a permit to operate a quarry, apply for the soil board permit. So rather than respond to this myself in an unprofessional way, I asked town council to get involved with it and respond to it. So this is a reason that I wanted to amend the order of conditions, but I found out we can't. So the only alternative to make sure they do it, and don't just tell us they're gonna do it, is to issue an enforcement order with an order to correct it. That's what that's all about.
Going back to your point about this getting stretched out, so, and I wanted that clarified, and I think you hinted at it. Why is the town council advising us to go that route as opposed to what he mentioned in the...
Because we don't have any faith that they're gonna do it. I have no faith that they're gonna do it.
And you're basing that on things like this letter?
I get these letters from Doug Vigneault, and you're wrong, you don't know this. We do know. And that's why I gave you folks the copies of the regulation, and you can read it and see it for yourself, and we're almost done, Jimmy. And go from there.
Another meeting coming in here?
Yeah.
Yeah, when I booked the room, it was available, but FinCom did that. So.
I'm gonna let Mr. Leger respond, and then I'll have you, please.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack and respond to there. So I guess we're back to talking about stormwater. I'll just say this. Historically, it's my understanding that Keating had always been told by the town that they were sort of grandfathered exempt from stormwater. They didn't need the local stormwater permit. They have NIPD's permits. They had permits from DEP. It's not as though stormwater was not regulated on the property. Obviously, Mr. Hannon, since taking his position, has a different interpretation of the applicability of the bylaw to Keating's property. We don't necessarily agree with that. With that said, we've seen Mr. Hannon's letter. Mr. Hill, who's here this evening, did respond to that. It's not clear from Mr. Hannon's letter exactly where he's saying this paving occurred. And it's more than fair, in my view, for Keating to have a clear understanding of why it is that Mr. Hannon says we need a stormwater permit. That's all we're asking for, is clarification on that one particular point. What I just heard from Mr. Hannon, I think, is that he's talking about paving in the area of the HMA plant, the relocated HMA plant. Keating got a building permit for that in 2018. You heard Mr. Hannon talking earlier in one of the other matters under stormwater, saying that he had advised the building inspector not to issue a building permit until the stormwater permit was at hand. That is the way the process is built to work here in town.
But I didn't work here in 2018.
May I finish, Mr. Chair? Thank you. In 2018, when that building permit was issued, if Keating needed a stormwater permit, that would have been the time for them to apply. It didn't happen because, again, the interpretation of the bylaw was that it didn't apply to Keating's property. Okay? So we're talking about apparently going back in time 4 years to the issuance of a building permit when Mr. Hannon thinks we should have been required to get a stormwater permit and none was required. As I said earlier, we'll see the letter in response from town council, and we'll respond to that in due course. It sounds like we'll have a lot to talk about in a couple. The final point I would like to make is that towards the end of his comments, Mr. Hannon said something about the court ruling that heating's not exempt.
For the
That
soil
had-
board.
That had nothing to do with stormwater. Under the soil bylaw here in town, there was a clause which provided an exception for permitting from operations, facilities, properties that were sort of in existence prior to adoption of the bylaw. We argued we were exempt under that. There was an agreement with the soil board back in 2001 allowing heating to continue to operate. Town meeting last year amended the soil bylaw to strip that protection out. And it's based on that action that the court essentially said, well, you're not protected anymore. That provision doesn't exist anymore. It's a soil bylaw issue. It's not a stormwater bylaw issue. It has nothing to do with the Conservation Commission or the issues that are under your jurisdiction and authority. I just wanted to be very clear about that. I thank you for your time.
Okay,
Yeah.
So, yeah, Mr. Legier's mistaken about the 2018 part. Merrill Kelly in 2020 sent a notice to PJ Keating before they started paving for the asphalt plant and all those things, saying that they needed a stormwater permit under the bylaw, under the regulation. Doug Vigneault replied, we have a NIPD's permit, we don't need a stormwater permit. And that was the end of that. I'll get that letter out to the commission. If you want, I'll send it to you, Mr. Legier.
Please do. Thank you.
And I'm going off of what happened in 2021 and 22. I'm not going back to 2018, but Merrill, as the stormwater agent in 2020, sent a letter asking for a stormwater permit. So we'll cover that on that.
And please, if you would.
Hello, my name is Diane Abram. I just have a question. This may sound foolish,
Could you
but
tell
I'm
us
not...
your street name, please?
Oh, Pembroke Avenue.
Okay.
I'm a little confused. I know not Tilcon, JP Keaton has construction equipment. I'm just confused, and why is it such a project to move this stuff and get it out of there? I mean, why do we have to wait May, June, July, August, 4 months to move a bunch of that silk out of the way? I don't quite understand. If someone could explain to me what is so difficult to take that stuff and either move it or get rid of it or whatever you will do with it. I hear they sell it. Well, sell it, do whatever you have to do. But I can't see taking 4 months to move a pile of, when you have heavy equipment there all the time. It just doesn't make sense to me, and I wish someone would just explain to me why it's such a difficult project to move this when you have the equipment to do it.
I will give a short answer. Ryan, you work with this kind of stuff. Do you want to comment at all?
Well, I mean, the weather before, I would like Mr. Legier to talk about this letter that was sent, dated March 16th, and that's really, they were gonna do it by August, and that's what we're waiting on, I guess, so.
The short answer from me, as a person who has a little bit of experience, the pile is enormous. I don't think you have a sense of just how big that pile is. So
No, and I
it's going to
understand
take a long time to move
But
that.
4 months?
Well,
the last
depending on
meeting-
the weather and making
The last
sure-
meeting we went to, it was said that they would move it in May. And now we're back to August, and next month we'll be back to September, and after that it'll be, it seems like an ongoing thing. And I don't mean to be a pain in the neck, but, we have to do these things when we're supposed to. If someone tells me I have to clean my backyard, I can't wait 4 months to do it, I better do it now, because the Board of Health will be there tomorrow. I just think, I'm not against the company, because it is a company and we all need companies. However, I just don't feel they're as good a neighbor as Warren Brothers was, Tilcon was. They would come to my house and make sure the blasting didn't do my foundation. I mean, this goes back 50 years. My parents lived there 70 years. I just think, and I understand it's a big pile, but if you take baby steps, do a pile a little today, a little tomorrow, a little the next day, But to take 4 months, I understand the rain, and I am very well aware it rained pretty bad, but it just makes no sense. We just keep putting this off and off and off and off and off. Is this going to be a continuation of the next? You know, it just doesn't seem fair to me. I understand they have a company, and I do understand that. But please, can't you just do baby steps? Take a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, a little bit the next day.
I would say that baby steps would make it take even longer.
Well,
Yeah.
4 months.
I'm gonna let him respond, and we're gonna get kicked out of the room, so
I'll let
thank
you
you.
go.
Thank you for your.
But
Thank you.
just so you know, Keating has not said they would move it in May.
I thought the last meeting they said it was.
We were asking for that.
Oh, you
They
were
have never-
asking. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just really quickly to respond to Mr. Rosenda's comment, the May 16th letter, I think this is what you held up, May 16th, 2022.
March 16th.
Oh, excuse me,
Yeah.
March 16th, 2022. Yeah, that was what I was referring to. This is the letter that does lay out that timeline, beginning next month in May, and then completing the removal of that pile by August. And I think I may need Derek Hill here to pick up the slack on this answer, but I think responding to the question about the timing of it, there is a timing component to this work, as we've discussed before, to be able to stabilize the pile. It's not something that we could have been doing throughout the winter. We really do need the weather to be appropriate to be able to stabilize. And so that's certainly a part of it, and we also need contractors to do the work, and this is the availability that we're able to get and to commit to. So I guess all I can say is you have a letter from me committing to that timeline on behalf of Keating, and as I said before, that's my understanding is this is really the timeline that we're able to commit to. We don't want to give you a date today and then have to come back to you, ask for the mea culpa in 2 months because we couldn't get the job done. This is a realistic and reasonable timeline. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Resendez. And
Mr.
everyone
Hill,
else.
did you want to?
Yeah, I can. Good evening, my name's Derek Hill, I'm the president of PJ Keating. So to comment to the issues, the order of conditions are pretty clear, right? Signed in July 9th, 2021, 3 years to do the work. And, so back to your comment, like, why don't we start tomorrow? We're working on a plan to do that, right? That includes engineering. We've been flying the area. We've done topographies, all of those sort of things. We're going to do test pits for shears and all of those things. So we do it right? So all of that stuff is ongoing now, and I've been in construction all my life, right? So I've moved a lot of earth. We're a mining company. So back to your comment, those rigid frame trucks, they're really not the safest and right units to put out near a wetland buffer. And we wanted to wait, because if we'd gone out near that buffer area when it's warm and we get mud season, we're just gonna do more damage, right? So we're waiting for that. We're moving into that right season. And when you think about this order of conditions, we also have planting, right? So in our business, we know as we get into the summer months, now with global warming, it doesn't seem like we have summer months and things get dry, but typically growing seasons are, they're gonna tell you, as you move later into June, it becomes a drier period, and then you wanna do your plantings. So we'd complete the work, the grading, all of that work would be done. Then we'd turn it over late summer and bring the wetland scientists in for the plantings and do all of that. They would make the decision to say, do we plant in the fall, which is usually what they'll either say we should plant in the fall, or we plant in the spring. We will follow that plan. It's part of that. It was in our order of conditions. I think we just got to remember this order of conditions is what we agreed to, and we've got 3 years. And if we finish that work, whether we plant this fall or we plant in March or April of '23, we'd still have over a year to monitor those plants when we have to deliver back to the town by July 9th, 2024, the project. So I think we're working toward that. I understand what you're saying, and it would see, but the big 992 loader, those rigid frame haul trucks, those are for the
I have a
quarry.
question for you, though.
Sure.
If the ground is gonna get more wetter because of summer, unless it gets extremely heat,
Yep.
wouldn't it have made sense to, when the ground was frozen or basically frozen, to start moving some of that I mean, it just
it
makes-
becomes more difficult to manage this, because then there's no growing season. So as we build and build the slopes and do all of that, we're gonna wanna stabilize that, and we'd have to wait through so the winter season doesn't have any growth. So that's what we're trying to accomplish, stabilize the area, remove the material, and then have it prepared and ready to go.
Mr. Hill, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we got anything else lower on the agenda?
I just want to touch that up for 1 second. The reason that I and town council are thinking of an enforcement order is because the applicant has failed to comply with the order of conditions for the notice of intent. They told us they were doing daily inspections. They told us they were going to control the slopes. There's been multiple additional failures and silt beyond the silt fence. So they're not in compliance with the order of conditions. And the order of conditions was, in my mind, accidentally left open-ended, that there was no date certain that Keating needed to do that. I was a contractor on the Big Dig. I moved millions and millions and millions of tons, and it didn't matter if it was rain and snowing or blowing. The dirt moved. And they don't stop building buildings because of bad weather. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done at date certain. And because they're in violation of that order of conditions, we need to do an enforcement order for protection of the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act.
Mr. Leger, because our town administrator is staring me down, I'm going to have to curb this discussion here.
Understood, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Unless there's immediate major business, I'm going to entertain a motion.
I got one last thing, it's on the agenda and I'd like to get it out here.
Right.
So I was contacted by EPA enforcement folks, and we talked about they were interested in the wetland violation. And they looked into it and said because Keating didn't deliberately put the soil in the wetlands, that it's not a Clean Water Act violation, it's not in their jurisdiction, it has nothing to do with them. It's a DEP and town of Acushnet thing. But as far as the wetlands loss goes, for the wooded swamp over by the old asphalt plant, he said that they are interested in enforcing that. He said the statute of limitations has run as far as penalties go, but as far as injunctive relief and making them represent the wetland, that's good forever. So they're interested in that. And then I got a call from another part of EPA that deals with criminal activities. And there was a situation at Keating where Keating was sampling the outfall, and they weren't doing the testing as was required in the NIFTY's permit. They were supposed to take composite samples. They only took grab samples. We videotaped this. Kevin Gaspar was with me. Kevin Gaspar questioned Doug Vigneault, "You're not doing this right." And Vigneault told him, "I know what I'm doing, we're doing it right." The video has been sent to EPA. Their criminal division is going to be contacting me next week, and we're going to see where that goes. After that is our stormwater compliance. We're on track to be compliant for our June report that goes in. Everything will be done, and we need to talk about getting an annual report for the commission together for a town meeting. So if anyone has any significant things that the commission accomplished or did in the past year, please send it in to me and I can get it in the report. And we all have cell phones now for the town. I gave you guys my town phone number. Call me anytime you want. I've had residents call me at 4 in the morning, and I've answered their phone calls. So, and our next meeting is the 27th at 6 o'clock.
Yep. I recommend we all have a nice hearty meal before that meeting.
It's probably going to be at the Council on Aging, because it's going to be public hearings. And I'm sure it'll be standing alone.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, we can. Favor? All right, meeting adjourned at 7:00.